The storm always heralded change. In the heart of Jamaica, between mist-covered mountains and rough seas, there was the kingdom of Trelawney, a prosperous refuge for warriors and traders. The people lived in harmony with nature, cultivating the land and celebrating life to the sound of drums and ancestral chants. At the center of this vibrant world was the young princess Amara, daughter of King Omari and Queen Nia. But Amara was no ordinary princess. Since childhood, she had traded dresses and jewelry for swords and battle strategies. While other young women learned about etiquette and embroidery, Amara trained to protect her home. Then, in the dead of night, fate came to demand her courage. The sky turned red as flames danced on the walls of the kingdom. Screams echoed through the cobbled streets. A ruthless army from the northern islands launched a relentless attack. The invaders were led by General Kanoa, a merciless man who burned everything in his path. King Omari, wounded in battle, could no longer lead his warriors. The city collapsed. The fate of Trelawney was now in Amara's hands. Her heart was pounding in her chest. The options were few: fight and die or flee and survive. Amara looked at the faces of her people and made her decision. She would not let the kingdom fall without one last battle. Fire consumed the wooden and thatched houses, while the roar of the waves mingled with the cries of the villagers. Amara, sword firmly in hand, climbed to the top of the wall and shouted, "Trelawney will not fall today. Fight for your lives, fight for our land." Men and women responded with war cries, picking up spears, knives and bows. But deep down, everyone knew the truth: they were outnumbered and had no chance of victory. The first clash was brutal. Kanoa's mercenaries advanced like a relentless wave. Amara fought like a hurricane, deflecting blows, attacking with precision, but the battle was unequal. For every enemy knocked down, two more took their place. Then came Kanoa's devastating order: leave no one alive. Amara realized that continuing to fight would be a mistake. She had to save what was left of her people. Making a quick decision, she ran to the civilians hiding among the rubble and shouted, "Run to the forest. Run now." Children, the elderly and survivors began to run towards the dense jungle surrounding Trelawney. The remaining warriors tried to hold them back as long as they could. But Kanoa saw the movement and ordered his men to chase them. Amara stayed behind, struggling to give her people time. Her body burned with exhaustion, her muscles screamed, but she couldn't fall there. When the last barrier was breached and the enemies stormed the citadel, she fled into the forest. Now, lost in the darkness of the jungle, with injuries and few resources, Amara had to survive. Her kingdom was in ruins. Her people were scattered. What was left for her now? The forest was a world apart. The screams and the smell of smoke from the destroyed kingdom were behind her, but the threat was still close. Amara ran between twisted trees, feeling the weight of defeat on her shoulders. Her people were scattered, wounded, perhaps dead. The rain began to fall, cold and heavy, erasing the traces of her escape. Her body burned with exhaustion and the cuts on her skin were stinging from the water coming down from the sky. She couldn't stop. Not now. After hours of wandering aimlessly, she found shelter in a cave covered in roots. But she wasn't alone. In the dark corners of the cave, eyes were shining. An old man with wrinkled skin and simple clothes watched her. He held a carved staff and his presence was both reassuring and unsettling. "You carry the spirit of the storm," he said, his voice like the wind among the leaves. Amara stepped back, holding her sword, but the old man just laughed. "If you want to save your people, you have to accept who you really are." The princess hesitated. Everything she knew had been taken from her. Her kingdom, her family, her safety. But there, in that unknown forest, something new was born inside her. The desire for revenge? Or the strength to start again? "Teach me," said Amara at last. The old man smiled. The real battle was just beginning. The forest pulsed with life. The wind whispered through the leaves, the branches creaked as if they held ancient secrets, and every shadow hid something that could be both a danger and an answer. Amara was no longer running away. She was learning to listen, to observe, and to become part of the jungle. Baba Osei, the shaman of the forest, became his guide. His deep gaze carried the weight of the ancestors, and his words were sharp as invisible blades. "Strength alone does not win battles, child of the storm. The jungle has its own rules. You must learn them or you will be devoured by them." The shaman's teachings. Amara trained from sunup to sundown. Her hands became calloused, her feet agile in the treacherous terrain of the forest. She learned to move like the wind, to hunt like a silent predator. Baba Osei taught him to use his own nature against his enemies. Small blue diamond root poison. One drop could incapacitate a man in minutes. Healing herbs, a mixture of leaves and bark that could stop blood and relieve pain. Small blue diamond hunters' traps, nets hidden under leaves, spears that emerged from the ground, covered holes to catch the unsuspecting. Signs of the jungle. The flight of birds could warn of the arrival of the enemy, the whispers of trees told secrets to those who knew how to listen. Baba Osei looked at Amara with silent admiration. She was a quick learner. She was strong, but she also knew when to be patient. The storm doesn't strike immediately. First it prowls, it lurks, it grows. She understood. She wouldn't attack Kanoa now. She would let him think that he had won, that his strength was supreme. But while he slept peacefully on his stolen throne, she would become the gale itself. The call of the survivors. Little by little, more survivors found their way to Amara. Women who had fled with their children. Men who refused to kneel before Kanoa. Old warriors, wounded but with their spirits still burning. The princess lives, they whispered in the shadows. The storm will return to sweep away the invaders. Amara gathered her people around a fire. She looked at those faces marked by pain but full of hope. They needed her. And she would not let them die at Kanoa's hands. We are not just survivors. We are warriors. The eyes of those present shone. Every day they trained together. Each night, they spread rumors that the Storm Princess had not fallen. She was growing. Kanoa could have taken over the kingdom. But soon he would realize that a storm doesn't die down, it just waits for the right moment to destroy everything in its path. The sky was overcast, laden with heavy clouds as if nature itself was preparing for the final confrontation. Amara, now transformed into a leader of warriors, was ready to face the storm that had formed in her own kingdom. The survivors who had gathered around her were more than ready to fight. They were no longer just civilians. They were warriors shaped by the fire of loss and the furnace of their own hardships. Together they had become a force to be feared, like the storm that came to break Kanoa's tyranny. At the base of the mountain, Kanoa's fortress stood like a stone monster, surrounded by a wall of fire and steel. Kanoa's troops stood there, confident as if fear had already been crushed. But Amara knew that the enemy's confidence was their greatest weakness. With a gesture, Amara signaled to her warriors. They had infiltrated the jungle, studied the terrain and prepared their traps. The attack would be swift like lightning and devastating like thunder. She remembered Baba Osei's words. The storm doesn't attack in a hurry. It surrounds, it waits, and when it arrives, it is relentless. Now, she shouted, and the warriors began to move like shadows. The battle in the shadows. Kanoa's mercenaries had no time to react. The traps worked with deadly precision. Men fell, cries of surprise echoed through the fortress. The shock was devastating. Amara and her warriors surged forward, using the jungle as a shield, emerging from the darkness to deliver swift, sharp blows. Amara led her force like a storm. With her sword, she cut into the flesh of her enemies, not with hatred but with a clear purpose, to save her people, to recover what had been lost. In the midst of the chaos, Amara spotted Kanoa. He was imposing, his black armor gleaming under the flames. The leader of the invaders was there, waiting. The confrontation everyone had been waiting for would finally take place. Amara, his sword drenched in blood, approached. Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the sound of fighting around them. Kanoa stared at her with a cruel smile. "Do you really think you can beat me? You're just a princess. You have no place on the battlefield." Amara moved closer, her gaze like a bolt of lightning about to strike its target. She knew she was at a physical disadvantage. He was stronger, more imposing, but she had something he didn't, the indomitable spirit of the storm. "I am more than a princess. I am the end of your tyranny." The fatal duel. The combat between the two was intense. Swords clashed, sparks flew, and the sound of blades echoed through the fortress. Kanoa attacked with brute force, trying to crush her with every blow. But Amara danced, dodging, moving like a shadow. Every move was calculated, precise. However, the battle wasn't being won with force alone. Amara realized that Kanoa, for all his skill, had underestimated the jungle. The battle was taking place on his turf, on his rules. She knew he wouldn't understand the signs of nature. When Kanoa missed a blow and lost his balance for an instant, Amara saw her opportunity. With a fierce cry, she brought her sword down with deadly speed, cutting through his armor and striking his chest. Kanoa stumbled back, surprised. His smile disappeared as he bent forward, trying to breathe. "This is the end for you, General." With a final movement, Amara withdrew his sword and, with one last blow, defeated Kanoa. The invading leader fell to the ground, his life rapidly ebbing away. The storm had finally calmed down. The silence after the storm. The fighting quickly ceased after Kanoa's death. The mercenaries, without leadership, began to flee, leaving behind the bodies of their comrades and the destruction they had caused. Trelawney, with Kanoa's death, had been freed. Amara looked at the battlefield, where her people were beginning to gather, all with expressions of relief and elation. They had won. But the victory was not just theirs. It belonged to all those who had fought, survived and lost. She raised her sword to the sky. Trelawney had been rescued, but the real victory would be built from the ruins. Era wasn't finished yet. The first rays of sunlight, breaking through the heavy clouds of battle, illuminated the fields of Trelawney, but the true light was in the hearts of her people. Amara had brought more than victory to her kingdom. She had renewed hope. With Kanoa's death, the land of Trelawney was finally free from the tyranny that had cast its inhabitants into darkness. But the battle had left deep scars, not only on the devastated land, but on the souls of those who had faced the enemy. Amara, with her indomitable spirit, was now more than a princess. She had become a legend. She was the storm that had swept away the oppression, but she was also the calm that remained after the destruction. Those scars of war, the faces of suffering, were now being rebuilt, not with fear, but with renewed determination. Trelawney's new dawn. In the days following the battle, Amara took on her new role as the rightful leader of Trelawney, not only by the strength of her skills as a warrior, but by the strength of her heart. She led her people in rebuilding the devastated villages, planting the burnt crops and bringing back the peace that had seemed impossible for so long. She met with local leaders, men and women, old and young. Justice lay not only in punishing the invaders, but in restoring dignity to the people of Trelawney. With wisdom and courage, Amara brought change to the kingdom, transforming it into a place where the people were more than just subjects, whether they were hunters, fishermen, or craftsmen. Everyone had a voice. Everyone contributed to a prosperous future. The storm is not quenched. After weeks of hard work, Amara climbed back up to the castle walls, looking out over the distant sea. The storm that had dominated her life had not died down. She could still feel it on her skin in the winds that surrounded her. But now, instead of destruction, she used that force to protect. The storm had become a force for renewal. Trelawney's future is now mine. But it belongs to all of us. Amara thought, remembering the many who had fallen, but who, through their courage, had helped to create what was now the new kingdom. Amara's legacy. The stories of her bravery have been told from generation to generation. Amara, the Storm Princess, was no longer just a local heroine. She was a symbol of resistance, strength, and rebirth. Her name was engraved on the stones of the kingdom, not as a reminder of a battle won, but as a reminder that even in the face of the deepest adversity, the true strength of a storm lies not only in destruction, but in the ability to rebuild.